Thank you. All right, so it's 7 o'clock and we'll get started. All right, so welcome everybody. It's great having you join us again. This is the fourth talk that we're having. And we've been to Istanbul and Florence so far at the time of the Renaissance. And last time we went to India to visit with Victoria Loutman to see the vanishing stepwells of India. And today we're going to go and Adil is going to take us into, again, another fascinating and little known world. And this is the world of hand-painted Bollywood posters. These are huge monumental billboards that were put up, and they're actually hand-painted. They used to be hand-painted. Before we get started, just some housekeeping. The talk is roughly an hour long. Adil will probably speak for about maybe 40 to 50 minutes, depending on how many questions are coming in. You may experience intermittent freezing, brain freeze as well, frozen screen syndrome, as I call it. And it might be because you might have too many devices running on your site. So you might want to switch off devices that you don't need to conserve bandwidth. We do welcome all your questions. We look forward to them. So please, you can either use the Q&A function or the chat function, which is at the bottom of your screens. And should you have an urgent concern, please raise your hand using there's again, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see raised hand. Just to give you a glimpse of what's coming up next talk, we're going with the professor of history at American University in Washington, and he is going to talk to us about the Taj Mahal, basically all the things that the tour guides don't tell you, and he's going to take us into a deep dive into the real what went on behind the scenes during the construction of the Taj Mahal. So be sure to join us for that as well. The only thing is that in 2 weeks' time, it's a presidential election, so I'm still kind of humming and hawing about the dates, but we'll let you know. All right, so I have pleasure in introducing Ali Adil Khan. I know him as Adil, so I'll be referring to him as Adil. And Adil, would you like to come on now? Great, thank you. So I have pleasure in introducing Adil. So Adil's going to take us to Mumbai to learn about the dying art of hand-painted billboard posters. In an internet-less world, their incredibly talented creators had limited resources and never actually met the actors that they depicted. Yet they managed to nuance the posters with a huge range of emotions that kept pulling audiences and helped make Bollywood the world's largest film industry. And Adil is the founder of the South Asian Gallery of Art, and he's also the director of the S.A.G.A. Foundation in Toronto. He's an art critic, curator, writer, and collector. He has curated exhibitions in Canada and served as an advisor to various museums, including the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum, and the Aga Khan Museum. In researching hand-painted Bollywood posters, he traveled to India to meet with and watch the only remaining artists practice this art form. And among his collections, he's got vintage Bollywood posters, which are a cherished centerpiece. And you can see them from his colorful backdrop. So over to you, Adil. I'm going to switch myself off and you have the stage. Carry on.
Thank you, Sheila. And thank you, Eat Your Heart Out Tours, for the opportunity to talk to your members. It's truly a great honor to talk about this fascinating dying art of Bollywood. Let me just share my presentation, and I'll be using some background slides as I go along. Can you all hear me? Okay. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The dying art of Bollywood, it all started in 2011 when I went to Mumbai to scout some of the artists to present at an exhibition that was being put up at the art gallery of Mississauga called Picture House, the Art of Bollywood. And I was co-curating that one with Asma Arshad Mahmood. What I discovered was a fascinating journey that led me to eventually collecting posters, all of these vintage posters and billboards. And Sheila mentioned S.A.G.A Foundation, which stands for Sheila and Adil Giving for Art Foundation, that I set up last year to help some of these artists in South Asia. So before I start my talk, I feel it's important to share the psyche of the moviegoers in India, because it's key to understanding the art depicted in the posters and the billboards in India. So the regular moviegoers are the rickshaw drivers and the hard workers of India who go to watch a movie at the end of the day to get some entertainment, to see some action, you know, to live up sort of their dreams and watch a movie for 3 hours and come back home relaxed. Some of the people actually, for movies that are blockbusters, would buy 3 shows and stay on to watch the other movie. You can see from these pictures in the movie theaters how intense people are and how captivated they are by the film stars and by the stories depicted, whether it's rags to riches stories or it's a love triangle. So again, the backdrop is the people, man and woman on the street. Okay, first I'll talk about billboards, and then I'll go into detail of posters and also touch upon lobby cards. Starting with billboards, this is prior to 1985 or 90s, mid 90s, I would say, when digital technology took over. Um, these billboards were hand painted on canvas. Actually, it was cloth that was hardened using glue, and they used paint over the canvas, and these were repainted over just because they wanted to reuse the canvas. Now, as you can see, they're bright colors used. You will see a lot of knives and guns because that's what people at that time used to come to see, action in the movies. They use bright colors, as you can see, and also the lettering was quite interesting. So they came up with their own lettering style. I must actually also mention the importance of Bollywood here, right? Around mid 1980s, Bollywood took over Hollywood in terms of the number of movies produced in a year. Hollywood produced around 500 films, and Bollywood now produces 3 or 4 times as much. Also, their viewership, Hollywood has about 2.53 billion, and Bollywood has much more, following close to 4 billion now. The technique that was used to produce these large scale billboards, and this is this billboard, which was exhibited at Art Gallery of Mississauga, you can see was around 10 feet by more than 12 or 15 feet, huge canvas. This is another one, which is from Lohe Ke Haath, again, 1990 vintage. And you can see some of the scenes depicted. Actually, a woman kicking a man here. I am not going to say where, but you can see from the action, a lot of women empowerment shown here. And the artist is trying to tell a story to the viewer, why they should come and watch the film. This is before internet. This is even in some cases before television. This is another large billboard that is in my collection. Is from Ek Sapera, Ek Lutera. And this was actually from 1965. It's a large billboard, and you can see how it's beautifully painted, and it has survived over the years. Now, this billboard is not in my collection, but it is for a very, very important film. It's a epic film produced in India. It took about 12 years to make, called Mughal-e-Azam. It's about the story of a Mughal prince um, and his love story. And he was, the great Akbar's son, Shah-Jahan. And uh, the love story is depicted here. But I wanted to highlight the key points here. Like this scene here is a song and dance scene, as you can see, which was a very important scene for which a multi-million dollar at that time, or rupees, set was produced with a lot of glass, like similar to the Sheesh Mahal at the Delhi Fort, Red Fort. Um, the other point here is the hero and heroine, you can see, are depicted here. Dilip Kumar and Madhubala, who are still, considered one of the top actors of India. Director's name is very important because the film is all about director, how it's directed. So um, stylized lettering, I mentioned. This is an interesting style that was, I believe, invented either in Hollywood or Bollywood and used. Artist signature was also present here. Deepak is the name of the artist. And lastly, the music director. So the music scores or songs would also make either the film or make it a flop. So Naushad at the time was one of the top film music directors, and his name is shown here. And then obviously you can see liberal use of fluorescent colors, the interesting, very bright pink, red, yellow and green. This is how, before 1995, as I mentioned, these billboards were hung on the roadsides or on top of the theaters, cinema houses. And then after 1995, with the advent of digital technology and large scale printing and printers, it was printed digitally and posted. So this is a picture I took in 2011 in Mumbai, and this is pre-1995. Similarly, as I mentioned, this is a Cinemaplex, Devi Cinemaplex, and these are digital billboards. So when I went in 2011 to Mumbai, I wanted to research and meet some of the artists who are actually still practicing this art. And I found one studio behind Alfred Talkies, which is, you can also see Ripon Theater. This was 1880 establishment by the British, owned by Parsis in Mumbai, and later on converted into Alfred Talkies. And this billboard is about, I would say, 50 feet by 10 feet high, was painted inside this theater in the studios of artist Rahman Sheikh, who I met when I went there. And again, you can see a lot of, pistols, and the men are giving the message, don't mess with us, while the women are, giving an enticing look, come talk to us, right? That's what the audience wants. And you can see cars flying, explosions happening. Now, what's interesting is that these billboards, huge billboards, were actually made from black and white backstage photographs. So this is a photograph of Amresh Puri. This is also in my collection, which is about roughly 9 by 6 inches, black and white. So an artist would be given this photograph and say, okay, go make a billboard. and they would, you know, then using the grid you know, method of they would divide this into whatever 12 grids, and then reproduce it. Uh, they also brought out the distinct features of the actors, and you will see in the posters they not always ended up making portraits that resemble the actors, and that was fine with people. They would still recognize. This is Madhuri Dixit, again, a photograph from one of her films. It's a still, was used. And this comes from the collection of Firoz Rangoonwala, who actually wrote a book on this as well. Now, a few years ago, when I actually visited Mumbai and I went to the Chor Bazaar, which is called the Thieves Market, famous for if you have anything stolen from your home, you can go and buy it back from that market. Everything turns up in that market. And I acquired this drawing from Chor Bazaar, which is actually it's a sketch by artist Rahman Sheikh, the same person who made that large billboard, or with helpers. So this is, as you can see from the size, literally 4 by 10 inches, and has Amitabh Bachchan here, good resemblance, Shashi Kapoor, another actor, and it's made for the film, and Smita Patil for the film Namak Halal. So Namak Halal is written in Urdu here, in Hindi, and will also be written in English for the masses, right? This is, I'm showing you how, although it's not the same movie, this is for Humse Badkar Kaun, and this is for Namak Halal, but you get the idea here. This is for another movie, a sketch made for Mughal-e-Azam, which I mentioned earlier, and has Dilip Kumar and Madhubala here. This is a sketch made for Satyam Shivam Sundaram. It says here in Urdu, and it says here in Hindi. Again, it's Shashi Kapoor. This was also a blockbuster with Zeenat Aman, and it was quite, at the time, I still remember as a child when it was released, it was controversial because Zeenat Aman did not wear a blouse in that movie. She was wearing a sari without a blouse. All right, so where are these artist studios, and who are these artists who paint these large billboards, and what techniques do they use? You can see on the other one you saw it was being painted upside down because somebody made a sketch and gave an apprentice to actually fill the colors. So this is a highly guarded trait. It's passed from father to son, or to very close relatives or students, because the colors used and the way they mixed and the way they showed the pictures, they use a technique called cutting light, which showed more light on the face. So most of these artists, I'm going to go back one before most of these artists are unsung heroes, as I like to call them, because no one actually recognizes them. They never have had an opportunity to shake hands with an actor, but they still work day in and day out to produce this large billboards. Some of them actually work all night under tight deadlines, and they, back in the 1930s, one of the greatest Indian artists, his name is M.F. Hussain, who I'll talk about in a minute, actually painted these billboards on the footpaths or the walkways of Mumbai under the street lights, because he couldn't afford a place which was big enough. So he would come out at night at 1 a.m. and paint those. This is M.F. Hussain. who started off as a billboard painter and became Picasso of India. And he lived up to 95 years. And towards the end, he lived in London and Qatar, but is originally from Mumbai and Indore. Um, he is famous for walking barefoot. I actually met him in London um, for 2 days, and I saw him walking barefoot and getting out of his Rolls Royce barefoot, and everybody would just go crazy when they saw that. Um, this is again. Uh, he was very wealthy. He would sell his paintings are now selling for $3 to $5 million, large paintings, um, and this is a capture of when he actually bought a limited edition Bugatti and in Dubai and basically swiped his credit card to buy it. Some of the other cars he had in his collection were Bentleys, Jaguars, Mercedes, Ferraris, and Rolls Royces. When I met him in London in 2007, he took me in his Rolls Royce, and actually there was a Mercedes sports car that got parked next to him. We were waiting at a traffic light, and he told me that, Adil Sab, you have to drive this car lying down. Basically, you're lying down. So he had driven that car. Um, and so again, really fond of cars, really fond of Bollywood actresses. Madhuri and some of the others, were his muses, and really did well, in his life. When I met him in London, he was doing a series on Mughal-e-Azam, and he painted 51 very, very large uh, paintings. They were being exhibited in K. Asif's, the producer of Mughal-e-Azam, in his Park Lane apartment, two-storied apartment where M.F. Hussain had made his studio. These paintings were commissioned by Usha Mittal, the wife of Lakshmi Mittal, one of the richest men, in India, and he now lives in London. But this is on the three dynasties of India, right? This is the Mughal dynasty. This is, I forget, Ashoka, and then the British rule. He also did this again. This is Nehru being depicted here, and Indira Gandhi at the back. In the later times, and then you can see Buddha, and this is more a religious depiction, and the secularism in India at the time. This is again a triptych, very large painting, and this was shown at the Victoria and Albert Museum. The entire these were eight paintings. I believe Mr. Mittal paid $1 million to M.F. Hussain for each of these. And this is on the dance of India, the dances of India, if you will. This is Kathak dance. This one is, I believe, Bharatnatyam, and this is the Kathakali, the three famous classical dances. Okay, again, going back to the unsung heroes of Indian cinema, who were these people? Who were these artists who painted? And why do people don't know about them? In my research, I found out about all of these. So Babu Rao is the first one, who's actually, you can go back and document. Although the first film in India was made in 1913, but the first poster, known poster or available poster, is from 1924 movie. And Babu Rao actually painted that poster. The later ones who came, Pandit, Parchure, Kamble, Malgonkar, Bhosle, Sharma, Mohan, Yashwant, and you'll see their signatures. For example, the one behind me on this here says Mohan at the bottom. That's painted by Mohan. And the one on the right says Rahil, the artist. Um, So Diwakar is still alive, and Rahman Sheikh is still alive. These are the two great masters who are still alive. Diwakar lives in Pune, and Rahman Sheikh lives in Mumbai. Okay, what were these posters about? As I mentioned, right up to the, I think, 1960s, the movies made were black and white, but the posters produced for them were color. So that's an interesting point to note. And the artist actually used their creative talent to use those colors and depict those, right? Um, they've painted on canvas. Those uh, canvas paintings were then photographed and reproduced on low quality paper using lithographic printing on newsprint paper. That's why not many have survived over the years. The only ones that have survived were either lying around in cinema houses or godowns or warehouses. Um, so if you've been to India, you can see all over these posters are posted. This is a scene on a photograph I took near Juhu Beach in Juhu Road, and you can see all these posters. Another scene. So they are pasted everywhere, and then they get overpasted by other new movie releases. And it's for people who are walking by to see and say, oh, okay, interesting movie going to be released very soon. This is outside a cinema. You will see posters there as well. Okay, now I want to give you a view of what's inside a theater in India like. So again, when I went in 2011, I went inside New Roshan Talkies as well as Alfred Talkies, and I observed people going in and out. And so this is the entrance to it. This is also a very old theater established around 1925. So you can see a poster here. And there's a guy here who's going to look for your ticket, and there's another guy in case it's a house full show and there's a lineup, then he's going to put everyone in order. It says there are daily 4 shows in Urdu and Hindi, and it says rupees 15 is the ticket. Rupees 20 for balcony, better seats there. You can grab a hamburger as you're going inside to watch, and you can see people actually just looking or buying a ticket. Inside the theater, so the theater is actually inside this door, and there's a curtain there, and there's a film movie playing possibly, or in between movies. And you will see there is a little canteen or cafeteria. People can buy cookies and tea and other stuff. And what these are uh, called lobby cards. So that was the lobby. And in the lobby of the theater, they would put these lobby cards, which were stills from the movies. And people could, before going into the movie, to see the movie, they would go and see these shots and try to sort of enjoy that. And you can see again, people really interested in these stills and watching them. This is a houseful show, a really good movie. They put houseful, which means sold out. Okay, so historically, as I mentioned, these posters were, left lying around, whatever was left over in warehouses or cinema houses. But now they're available, and I've been collecting. Whenever I visit Mumbai, I go to the Chor Bazaar or the Thieves Market in Mumbai, and I have a source there who keeps, very rare posters for me, and what I shared with you, those drawings, and actually I also collected an invitation from the movie Mughal-e Azam. It was invitation sent out to VIPs um, back then to come, and it was like one of those rolls or farmans that used to go out um, from the kings. Uh, and I did have a note there. If you are looking at building a collection, beware of copies because there are reproductions made. Okay, Amitabh Bachchan, the angry young man, and you know the artist Divakar Karkare uh, produced these two posters, and he's actually credited with giving the angry young man or the larger than life image for Amitabh Bachchan and the popularity and the mass appeal from these posters. If possibly, and arguably Divakar did not paint these posters, uh, maybe Amitabh would not have had that kind of a mass appeal and success. And even in a poster, the main actor would get the largest space, as you can see. And then the side actors, this is Shashi Kapoor and this is Shatrughan Sinha, they would get smaller space, right? And again, he's trying to tell the story. This is Kala Patthar, all about coal mining. And this is Diwar, two blockbusters of Amitabh Bachchan. Um, and here, again, a scene from the start of the movie. Again, two more posters. This one is behind me. This is from Saudagar. This is a love triangle story. You can see two women, and also it has rags to riches. Like, he started off selling goods on the street, and then makes it big. Um, and again, you can see, you won't see a kiss on a poster, but close to a kiss. You see here, Dilip Kumar doing that. And previously, they had three titles, one in Hindi, one in Urdu, and one in English, right? And that is disappearing now. And there is less of Urdu, less of English, and more of Hindi that is seen on posters and billboards. Okay, so this is a poster from Barsat, a movie that was released, I believe, in 1940, 1930 or somewhere around there. I have the exact date, but in the 30s. Um, and the artists, as you can see, were inspired from Hollywood. Um, the the Gone with the Wind film was released in 1924 or 28, and Barsat was released in 1934, I think, or 32. And you can see how they, used similar imagery for this film. This is Kohinoor, again, done by Manohar, one of the very interesting posters and also in my collection, Dilip Kumar and Meena Kumari. And you can see the lettering is very interesting. And, it's clearly showing a prince and a princess, right, falling in love. And again, everyone's dream was to look like him. The hairstyle that Dilip Kumar had and Meena Kumari kept were followed by their followers. People would start, making these kind of jackets and wear them for their weddings and all. Now, fast forward 50 years from this movie, Kabil, the movie that was released, I believe, last year or the year before, Hrithik Roshan. Again, this poster is a completely digital poster. Um, and in my view, stylized on this one, right? This close resemblance. Um, but you can see this is completely devoid of any creativity in my mind, right? There is no artistic expression um, or, uh, or color in it. So I included this, and it's talking about lyrics by so and who's the director. Some of those things have still followed through, right? Who's the producer, um, and but again, you can see the difference between you know then and now. Some more posters that are interesting. This is again from Dilip Kumar's. Lot of color here. You can see in Johnny Mera Naam, Devanand was depicted as a playboy, uh, which a lot of moviegoers wanted to be. Um, this one is about a woman who was a police cop, sorry, a cop or a policewoman. Um, this is again from Diwar. This is one of the earliest posters in my collection from 1943, I believe. Um, and then I'm taking you to more recent ones. This is from 2016 from a movie by Amir Khan, Dangal. And you can see he completely transformed himself for the movie. It really worked out. And here they tried to do a sort of more creative artistic poster versus a fully digital poster. Okay, I'm coming close to my talk. I wanted to quickly talk about lobby cards. What are lobby cards? And they're basically collages using photographs and paint. So the artist would cut and paste an image. So you can see Shabana Azmi's image and I forget who this other actor is. And then the rest is all hand painted. They use templates to paint the name of the movie and all of those, or sometimes hand painted. Um, they were done also in individuals and studios. These have become extremely collectible as well. Royal Ontario Museum in 2011 also did an exhibition on lobby cards, and that was an exhibition from a private collection as well. Um, Again, you can see this is a picture cut and pasted, but the rest is all painted here, right? Again, so these would be put in the lobbies and people would actually, before going into the movie, look at this and try to make sense of these, that, okay, what's happening here? Somebody's being put on fire, alive or whatever, right? And they would look for those scenes. So that's the end of my talk, and I'm really happy to take questions and open it up. But in the end, I just want to say thank you. For more information, please do visit my Instagram on S.A.G.A Foundation. And shortly in December, I'm going to be releasing some of the posters from my collection to raise funds for the S.A.G.A Foundation, which is dedicated to preserving this kind of art as well as promoting artists from South Asia in North America. Thank you so much. Back to you, Sheila.
Well, thank you. Just, yeah, stay on, Adil, because we've got a number of questions. Thank you very much. Fascinating. Just lost in the world of Bollywood and vintage Bollywood, when it wasn't actually known as Bollywood at that time. It was just Indian films. I mean, Bollywood, I think the term came in the 90s, maybe. But yeah, fascinating, fascinating, and all the color and vibrancy of India. So it's wonderful. So we have a few questions. I'm just going to get started with the questions. We have, did the directors and producers tell the painters what to depict? That is the main theme, the guns, etc., besides the photographs of the actors. So how did they come up with all the paraphernalia on they had the images of the actors, but then they had everything else going on. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so they were actually commissioned by the distributors of the film. So after the film is produced, the producer would sell it to a distributor, and the distributors would then engage um, these artists to produce posters for promotion purposes, And the billboards would be commissioned by actual cinema houses and the cinema house owners, or the picture houses, as we used to call it, owners, to paint those. Um, so it's really the distributors of the films that would pay for the production and printing of those posters.
Right. Okay, great. And so, and then there's a question about how did Bollywood manufacture these, sorry, Hollywood. How did Hollywood manufacture these posters? Were they also hand painted during the, you know, the times before digital came on?
I suppose so. I haven't researched, so I cannot make a comment, but a substantial comment. But I have seen images, from back from Clark Gable movies, and earlier on they were hand painted. And they are also extremely collectible, those posters, and they do come up for auctions from time to time. They were also hand painted. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating to know that, you know, this is a dying world, you know, everything going on digital. It's like we're, you know, it's amazing that it even existed. So another question was, were these poster makers undiscovered artists? Were they already established artists? I guess that's what the question is about. Or were they just, you know, I don't know, doing some graffiti on the sidewalks, and how trained were they is maybe what the question is about.
Yeah, a great question. I meant to talk about that and I forgot. So some of these artists did go to some of the best art schools in India. They went to J.J. School of Art, for instance, or the Shanti Niketan in Kolkata. Um, but they never sort of, because of their, they had to um, come up with a living, and so was MF Hussain, right? Although he went to JJ School of Art, but he wasn't really selling art at the time. So to make ends meet, he would at night make these billboards and sets for films. He painted sets at night and make money. Um, and and what happened to some of these? Some of these actually went into this commercial line, while MF Hussain moved into more, non-commercial artistic, and joined the progressive group of artists of India in 1947. Um, and the rest is history for him. Um, but yes, most of these, and then there were some that I mentioned were taught. We have a mentorship uh, method in India for music and for art, right? From childhood, someone is taken into um, and by a master and taught everything, right? So that it's called, I think, Shashya. I forget the terminology, but it's the Ustad Shagird method. And the student does everything, makes food, makes tea, and then the master teaches them the art. Right?
Yeah, fascinating. Just like I guess a shishya, like
Shishya.
shishya. Yeah,
Right.
right. Okay, great. So then we have a question from Sajal who says, how does one differentiate between an original print or poster and a reprinted poster for collection? Can you actually see the brush strokes? I guess you could tell from whether the brush strokes are apparent or not.
Yes, good question, Sajal. I think I know Sajal. He's in Calgary. And so there are few things to watch out for. One is there are some marks on the poster back then that were required, and they're like cross marks, um, and that's where they indicate that's where the paper has to be cut from. Um, and also offset printing, you can make out offset printing um, from back, uh, you know, from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, versus what it looks like it's going to have shine in the newer posters, versus the old ones do not have any shines. And sometimes you will actually see misprinting. So you will see double image, similar to stamps, right? Those stamps that are valuable have these errors or so research on stamps to see what old stamps look like and new ones, and you can probably figure it out. But you can see from the quality of the paper, it's similar to making out between an old miniature painting and a new one. Um, there are ways of telling.
Right. Okay, great. There was a question about the lobby postcards. Did people actually go away with these? And it's still possible to pick up a few. How does one? So they were handed out in the lobby, were they, as part of promotion?
No, they were not. They were put on the wall for people to see. What was handed out back then, and then the practice stopped. This was actually in my grandmother's time. I remember my grandmother telling me that when she went to see a movie in India, they were given full song sheets. So written song sheets would be given, and she would bring back. She had a full collection of those song sheets. Apart from
Amazing.
that, yeah, apart from that, the ticket itself, the tickets have now, for Mughal Azam, for instance, have become extremely valuable and collectible. People really want those tickets and are willing to pay quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. We have a question here from Millie. She says, how much respect were these poster artists given by distributors and directors, and also by society? How were they respected, or was it something that was just behind the scenes? It was an invisible word, and people just kind of, made a beeline for the movie itself. Did they know about these artists? How well known were they?
Yeah, that's why I call them unsung heroes. They did not get as much attention and respect as they deserved, in my view. Um, and you know, compared to some of the other artists who were showing in galleries in Mumbai, for instance, got more respect and attention than these artists. And it's a sad thing to say and know, right? Um, Financially as well, they were not well off compared to those artists that were showing, um, in the large galleries, and were being their artwork was being hung in the living rooms of very rich people.
Hmm. Yeah, that's sad. You mentioned the tradition of painting was largely passed down from father to son. What kind of training did many of these artists have, and did they apprentice and learn techniques that way?
Yes. So the biggest one was how to produce from a 4 by 7 image into a um, 10 feet by 20 feet canvas, right? And MF Hussain, they say, became so famous and good is because he was able to do that. He was able to look at the perspective from far away and then go close and produce it. So that technique was taught and was learned by people. Again, color mixing, fluorescent colors, how to use those, what color to use where, um, and also what to highlight and what not to highlight um, was key. Some of those things were, passed down from father to son, uh, and made them, extremely sort of in demand, if you will.
Right, amazing. Okay, so at what point in time was the sound score included with the credit on the posters? So I guess there must have been a kind of a timeline, right? So the posters were made, maybe the sound score was being done. I mean, the sound director or whoever was responsible for the music score, they would have also been there would have been a timeline. So the question is from Carol, who's asking, at what point in time was the sound score included with a credit on the posters? Would you know that, or is that something?
So yes, so there are some posters that have, for example, Kagas Ke Phool is one. which means flowers or of paper. Yeah, kaagaz ke phool. That's a poster that's actually in the collection of Royal Ontario Museum here in Toronto that has score, written, at least the first of some of the songs written on it. That Kaagaz Ke Phool is, I believe, from 1950, some 52, 56, thereabout. And then they stopped after that, right? But that was the time they used to show that.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Carla asks, very interesting question. Why is that even in very tragic movies, we get to see lots of colorful dancing that does not seem to match with the dramatic content of the film?
I'll
Have
let
fun
you
with this
answer
one.
that, Sheila.
Well, I think, well, it's, Bollywood is pure escapism. And if you don't have, even if the theme is tragic, you want people to come out of there feeling uplifted. So, I mean, given that Bollywood is sometimes, if you see the rickshaw drivers gathered, or you see, uh, they may not have money, they may not have a lot of money at all for much entertainment, but they have a few rupees that they've cobbled together to go and watch a film. So they do want colorful dances. They do want happiness. They want all of those things depicted on the screen, because after all, they're going to escape a very hard life for many of them. Is that what you think? Adil, do you think that's a fair answer?
Absolutely, 100%. I think they want entertainment, and they want to come out of the theater relaxed. Um, Although there are some intense films that people used to come out crying as well, where used to end up in a tragedy, right? Um, and uh, but you won't see many um, you know blockbuster successes that are tragic, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And Andre asks, hello, not mentioned yet, were the huge hoardings painted in oil? And because oil takes time to dry, how did they manage the deadlines? Did they have deadlines? And what was the timeline?
Yes. So yes, they were in oil, and it would take time to dry. And this was acrylic wasn't even invented back then. So they used oil paints and maybe some enamel paint, if you will. And they would paint at night, and it would dry, by the morning, I guess, or it would take a couple of days. And I'd spoken to Rahman Sheikh, the artist, and the deadlines given to them were really tight deadlines. Like, they were like, okay, make this poster in a week, 1 week. So they'd just work, you know, uh, day in and day out. And that's where, you can see teams. He would go to sleep and he'll assign 2 or 3 of his students and, okay, fill this with this color, right? And if you looked at those drawings by him, it actually said paint paint this, make the head of this person 14 feet. So it had instructions what color to paint, the hair, or the clothes that he or she were wearing. So he instructed all of that, and then uh, yeah,
That's amazing.
24/7 that the work would continue.
Yeah, that's your new paint by numbers. Uh, okay, so we have a longish question from Michelle, who's provided some very interesting information. She said the late 19th, earlier 20th century ushered in the shift from fine to applied art in Europe. Many artists trained at the finest écoles in Russia and France hand painted movie and theater posters, printed advertisements, and programs. They also used ancient stenciling techniques called pochois. I may not be pronouncing that right, which layered the pigment in layers to the material. My question is, what types of early techniques did Indian artists develop, and how did they apply pigment to reach such radiance and color?
Yeah, so it was indigenous, I would say indigenously developed in India. I mean, these artists couldn't even afford to travel out of the city. They had no way, they had no access to television, was not there at the time, or internet. So it was all learned, um, by the artist locally in India. Some of the techniques they used were wash techniques that were prevalent in the Bengal school of art, and artists like Abdul Rahman Chuktai and some of the others there in from the Bengal school. Uh, use that technique, so they adopted that, and also some of the miniature painting techniques. And then as photography came in, they used in terms of um, composing the poster or composing um, the billboard. They used ideas from the early photographers like Raja Deen Dayal and others. So, and the Europeans did influence, um, and perhaps they were getting some posters, because there were English films being shown. This is pre-partition or pre-independence, and some of these artists would see that art. And a lot of modern artists from India have also were influenced by Paris and New York based artists, whether it's abstract or the uh, uh, other art, like surrealism, or like the French Impressionism and all that. So I don't know if I've answered that question. It's a very difficult question to answer. It takes, it'll take a long time. But I think it's mostly, in my view, indigenous technique that they developed.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
And the last two questions concern women. Were any of the artists women? Mary asks. Do you know if there were any women artists? I would think not, right? But maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, so quite a bit of research has been done, and here I have some books that have been written on the art of Bollywood, and um, they've done more research than I have, much more. Um, I've not come across any woman artist that has been noted in their research, and primarily because, and even today, I mean, in modern times, I don't believe there is any. Um, and Yeah, for example, in although so and it's, I'm not sure what's the reason, because in traditional miniature art in India, um, that was produced in the courts, there were female miniature artists in the 1700s, or the 16th 15th century. There were women miniature artists, and they signed their work. So not sure why there is no one, or perhaps there was one. And a lot of those miniature artists back then did not sign their work under their name, and they painted from behind the veil, if you will. But I'm not sure why.
Yeah, well, I might have some insight on that, and I believe it's because it's in India, art form is passed down generationally, and what is sometimes these are almost like trade secrets, but they're family secrets. And so I know in the textile arts, for example, a lot of the textile weaving and printings and so on, it's always a father to son passed down, just because there was always a fear that when the women married, they would take that, like the family secrets, basically. So imagine if Coke was a family run, outfit. And so, the woman traditionally, if she married and she would take the secret for making Coca-Cola, and how that would affect they would always closely guard that. And so it was always a father to son passed down. So maybe that's because you said it was a father to son here as well.
Yes.
So maybe that's one of the reasons. Okay, and then the last question we have from Miriam, who asks, most of the audience seems to be men. I guess she's referring to the photographs that you had from inside the movie houses. Did women attend these films on their own, like men, or would they have to wait to attend with men?
So in the high class theaters, you would see women attending the films, and you'd see them in balconies. And actually there was there was a slide which I had shown, and it's interesting, So husband and wife would go watch a movie, and they would actually sit in more expensive and higher levels seating. So yes, women did go and enjoy film, and they also went alone. Um, but I think they would probably go to better and a little more expensive theaters than this one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've had a wonderful, wonderful journey all the way to Mumbai and behind the scenes with you, Adil, and it's been fascinating. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Have a great evening, the rest of it, and we will keep you informed about the next talk coming up. It's going to be, as I mentioned, Professor Justin Jacobs. He's going to tell you everything about the history of the Taj Mahal and the building of the Taj Mahal, all those things that you don't find in the guidebooks, and all the palace intrigues that used to go on. And if you think that the Taj Mahal is simply a monument to love, and if you're a romantic, I love to tell you that you might get some of that romantic, some of those notions kind of crashed a little bit, or at least battered a little bit, because he's going to tell you about the exact reason why the Taj was built and so on. So thanks very much, and thank you, Adil. We'll keep you, and we'll be posting the link as well.
Thank you, Sheila. It's a pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.